Missions Pulse. Know God's heart, join His mission. This podcast is powered by Unreached Global. Subscribe, watch, and listen on YouTube today. Visit missionspulse.com.
Welcome back to Missions Pulse. We encourage you to know God's heart, join His mission. And what we're talking about today is something a little bit unique, however, super relevant. In 5 to 10 years, you're going to see what we're talking about today everywhere, and it's just kind of starting to pop up right now. What does the Metaverse mean for missions? And joining me today is Jason Poling. He is actually the lead pastor of Cornerstone Church in Yuba City, California. Also, he is a pastor in the Metaverse. And some of you are like, well, what does that even mean? We're going to get into that. But before we do, let's play this. And I'd like to welcome him on the show right now. Hey, Jason, good to see you, man.
Good to see you, David. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, your mic is hot, but we'll watch this
This is Pastor Jason
first.
Poling on a Sunday morning.
All right. Good morning, everybody.
And this is Pastor Jason Poling on a Sunday afternoon.
All right, we can get started now.
Well, his avatar, anyway.
Setting on my Streamlabs stuff. Hey, everybody. Social outcasts, man. They were considered by all polite society, including religious society, cursed.
Virtual reality is computer-generated simulation of a 3D image or environment. And churches are creating campuses of their church to reach people in virtual reality.
He's the lead pastor of Cornerstone Church of Yuba City, California, and now also of the Metaverse.
So creating campuses in the Metaverse, reaching people for Christ. This is a very unique touch, but I got to start with this real quick. Don't you think some people's impression of the Metaverse is this?
The Metaverse. Ever heard of it? If not, click off of this video right now, run as far as you can, as fast as you can, and never click on this video ever again if you care about your life at all. But if you have, welcome!
So that's the big question. Is this dystopian or what? Tell me a little bit about the Metaverse here. Catch us up.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, probably most people have at least heard the term, but most people have not been in the Metaverse, at least in the virtual reality version of it. So, the Metaverse is just a new way to kind of coalesce all of the internet capabilities that we have. A lot of people are calling it Web 3.0, right? So Web 1.0 is, you and I remember way back when, right? AOL dial-up, and you're just getting information content. You're not contributing anything to it. You're just checking out a page, trying to find a map to take your next trip, right? Web 2.0 then merged us into the next iteration of the internet where there's a lot more interactivity and communal, connections with others, and you're able to contribute blogs, all that kind of stuff. Web 3.0 is, and I'm simplifying it, by the way, Web 3.0 is much more immersive. So it's going to, the virtual reality is clearly like the emblem of the Web 3.0 environment, where you're going to be able to kind of enter into the internet, which sounds a bit dystopian, like a Matrix movie. And there will be aspects, and already are, where that is actually a reality, that it could be dangerous for a lot of people. But that's why the church should be there in the darkness.
Yeah. Well, that's what this whole conversation is about. There's a lot of people who have fears about the Metaverse, or what is the next stage? Is this the Antichrist, the entrance of the Antichrist? I'm sure there's people out there thinking that.
Oh yeah.
I'm kind of like that guy who's like, I don't want to be the one who's sitting between church and chapel bell. I want to run a rescue shop within a yard of hell, C.T. Studd says. I mean, this is where the church needs to be, right? Light shines best in the darkness. So catch us up a little bit. I mean, you've been a pastor of the IRL, in real life church, for 15 years, I think.
Yeah, 15 years, 4 years at Cornerstone in Yuba City, and then I was 10 years in Iowa as associate pastor. But yeah, 15 years, about 15 years now. So
awesome. Well, okay, so catch me up on your story. I mean, what you're a Gen Xer. I mean, you're not even a millennial, let alone a Gen Z. What are you doing in the Metaverse? How did you do this?
Yeah, one of my friends, Jeff Fried, always jokes around about my story. He's like, "Yeah, Jason didn't even know how to spell VR, let alone know how to even get into VR." So, and it was true. Like, I didn't know much about it. I'm techie to some degree. You obviously are as well. In our generation, I'm techie, but definitely all the stuff that we're seeing now, I had to learn quite a bit. But I was driven by the gospel, by being able to preach Christ and to see people come to Christ and disciple them. So I was like, I want to learn this, because there were really a ton of people out there. The fields are ripe, ready for harvest. And so 2019, I think what happened, I'm trying to remember the story because sometimes you forget, but I know that we had a PlayStation and we bought the headset for the PlayStation, the VR headset. And my sons, they loved it. And then I tried it on. It really is. If you've never been in virtual reality, it's pretty amazing. Now, when you see it on 2D, like what we just did on the NBC and other clips that you showed, it does look kind of cheesy. And actually, some of the art styles are designed to be sort of like the when Nintendo Wii or Me art style. That's just the way but there's a lot of photorealistic art styles that are really crazy immersive. And so when you're in there, even with the cartoon versions, just something about being in there and having that spatial relationship to other people, other things, interacting with it's pretty crazy. And so I can see why a lot of people are, getting themselves maybe too immersed in some of it. But when I tried it on, I was like, this is awesome, just from a technological standpoint. But then there's all these platforms and apps that you can get in, and people are there just to hang out. And so I just kind of casually would start talking to people and realizing, my goodness, I'm talking to individuals who would quickly start sharing some of their story, some of their heart, like within the first 5 minutes of meeting them. And I was just unaccustomed to that in the IRL space. I mean, most people are a little bit more closed off, and we see each other's physical face and maybe we know each other's given birth name, but people are really still hiding, like Adam and Eve in the garden. But in VR, it's almost like it's a tool that God has used to sort of trick people into sharing more and to revealing more about themselves, which then provides an entry point for the gospel, because they feel like they're in an anonymous space. They might have a avatar name that you can't see their real face as an avatar. And so maybe they evidently feel, because it's happened so often, where they'll share deep, deep stuff with a complete stranger. And that just provides this it's like going to, the Areopagus or the Mars Hill in Acts 17. I literally feel like I am with Paul when I go into the metaverse, just talking to all kinds of people. I mean, I've met Satanists and Muslims and nuns, N-O-N-E. There might have been some N-U-Ns too. I don't know, but I didn't see it. Yeah, although no, I did see one that had an avatar of a nun. I don't know if she's really a nun.
You're talking about the unaffiliated, right?
Unaffiliated,
in their religious.
N-O-N-E, right?
Yeah.
Man, Wiccans, like I think I said, agnostics, atheists. I mean, the whole gamut. And these people want to talk. They're there to hang out and to talk about deep things. So it's just so ripe for gospel conversations. And then as we began to, as I began to share, I was like, man, this is really an opportunity for the church. And so I talked to my church, and I started to interact with one of my elders who his sons were into the VR, and we kind of formed a little team, and we started doing some exploration, checking out sites, just seeing, is this possible that we could actually have a ministry here? And then around, basically when the pandemic hit, so the first weekend of the lockdowns, or maybe it was the week before when it was starting to really heat up, we just said, let's go for it. And so we started our first service in the metaverse, and I pretty much replicated what I did in the IRL context, or what I had been doing until the lockdowns. And I just kind of, I just did that because I didn't have the bandwidth to kind of totally reinvent the wheel. And I said, well, Lord, if you want to use it, I don't know if they'll sit and listen to me, but they did. And so the church just kept growing. And here we are, 2.5 years later, and we have 3 campuses in the metaverse now. And we've seen just scores of people come to faith. They're discipling. I mean, there's so many cool stories I'll tell you here in a minute, but I don't want to. That's kind of how it happened. It was like, man, how can we reach the lost? People that would never have probably darkened the doors of a church. People that are also in countries where it's not easy to get to them, or there isn't a gospel church, even an underground church, perhaps, for them to even attend. And so we've had a lot of opportunities talking to Muslims, people in China, that in spots in China where the local government is really intense about some of these things. And so we've had an opportunity to reach a lot of people.
Well, as you talk, you're making my mind go crazy with tons of different directions we can go. But I feel like I should be on with this avatar right here. Maybe not. But I guess this is something I wanted to ask you. I mean, you're going to different places. What happens when you interact with someone, let's say from Thailand, and they walk up to you? What about translation stuff? How does that work? Is it gonna come in and they enter your screen with translation? They say สวัสดีครับผมไม่เคยรู้จักเยซูคริสต์เป็นใครคุณบอกได้ไหมครับ? And then you understand them like, I've never heard of Jesus before. And then and then you go to China and you have some interaction with a guy who walks up to you. He's never heard the gospel before. And he says, 你好，我是中国人，我从来没有听说过耶稣基督，你能不能告诉我一下? I mean, is this what it's going to be like in the metaverse? Is there translations or?
So yeah, right now there are some mods that you can have, some ways to be able to translate instantly. It's actually out there. It's not super well used yet because it takes some time for some of the software to kind of make its way into all the platforms. So we don't have that right now. We're just an English speaking church, and so people that come into our church who don't know English, I mean, right then we're like, oh, we love you, but there's just not a way to communicate. And we hope hope as a church. I wish I knew churches that spoke their language that we could send them to. Right now, there really aren't that many churches that I'm aware of in a lot of different languages. I know Spanish speaking and English speaking. I don't know of anything else. There might be there might be a Mandarin church. One of my the people at my church on our team said he thought he had seen a Mandarin speaking church. So that will of course increase just like it is in IRL. But the technology, like you said, being in VR, it allows you to begin to instantly interact with them. Like Google Translate. I mean, you have to be careful because it's not always perfect. Sure. But yeah, they'll be talking, and their software is out there, and like you said, they'll be speaking in another language, and it will pop up in your headset. You'll be able to read it, or it'll do it instantly. So that's pretty cool, and that will become more and more. As as all that gets more intelligent, AI and stuff, that will become better and better. And it'll be seamless, in 5-10 years where you can talk to anybody, anywhere, anytime, any language. And right there, it's just amazing.
Well, that's the whole conversation here, the metaverse and the future of missions. I know you're a pastor in the States, but I mean, this is not an American phenomenon. This is a global phenomenon. The technology has traversed the globe. We live in a globalized world. And so I'm wondering, what are short-term mission trips going to look like in 5 years, 10 years from now? Are people going to not be buying plane tickets anymore? They're just going to jump into the metaverse and go to the Great Wall or visit Chiang Mai, Thailand, where I'm sitting right now? I mean, these are questions that impact the future of church planting and disciple making. And especially in a place like where I'm at right now in Thailand, where it's 0.77% Christian after 194 years of Protestant missionary work. We are the most unreached nation in Southeast Asia, even though we're a tourist destination and a huge tourism industry here in Thailand. But now, what does this mean for the near future? How are we going to continue reaching people? Or is it going to create more opportunities?
Yeah. That's a profound question. And I knew I was coming on this podcast with you, and I knew your background in missions, and I had actually thought about that, and I should have thought more about it. But now that you're asking it, I'm going to verbally.
You were coming on a show called Missions Pulse, bro.
I know you think I would have thought through that. But, but I think I'm going to verbally process with you, which is always dangerous because I don't want to say anything that might be offensive. But because we're probably some missionaries, I'm sure, are listening to this podcast or will listen to it. I think if the metaverse does become bigger than it is right now, if it could stay at this sort of range where it's just a subset of the population engages in it, uses it. But I do think because Apple's gotten in the game and they're about ready to release their VR headset and their mixed reality, all these big players, I mean, it's probably going to be like what the phenomenon of the iPhone, where it blew everything up. And so I think it's probably going to be the dominant thing in the world, and everyone's going to be in it. Again, there's some concerns there, dystopian wise. You've probably seen the movie Ready Player One, stuff like that.
I was going to ask you if you read that book.
Yeah, I've read it and seen the movie. So yeah, it could be like that, but that's where most people will be, especially younger generations. And I think for missions, it probably is going to be. So let me put it this way. Again, I'm verbally processing because I hadn't thought through that question. But our goal as a church is there are some metaverse pastors that are just purely digital, and their flock just remains digital. And you know what? I think there's real relationships, real salvations, real people going through real struggles, and they're able to really be helped by the preaching of the Word of God, the counseling of the Word of God. Discipleship can happen digitally. But I'm by intentionality a hybrid church pastor, a hybrid model, where we're trying to help people who are in the digital sphere, digital space, be exposed to the beauty of the bride of Christ, where they had not been before. Or maybe they've been de-churched because maybe they got wounded or they had bad views of the church, and now they're being reacclimated to the church in the metaverse because they felt it was less threatening. And now they're seeing the beauty of the body. And what our goal is to help them then emerge back into their local community, into a local fellowship, because there are superior benefits in the physical world. Again, I think church can really happen. In fact, I wrote this paper because I was really trying to process through as a white paper I wrote, and I can give you the link. Or anyway, it's cornerstoneyc.com /metaverse theology. And
okay,
I
I'll
wrote
put
it
it in the
because,
description here.
yeah, we'll put that there. I wrote it because I was getting a lot of heat because a lot of people were questioning, are you starting a church? How can you have a church in the metaverse? And biblically thinking through, I was like, yeah, you can literally have a church there. It may not have the superior sensory experience that you would in the physical, but it's still church. So I think we can have church. We can disciple people, help them deploy in a ministry. But I do want them to try to matriculate into local fellowships and experience that. So when it comes to missions, I think what it might look like is missionaries, their first impulse may not be to go to a foreign country in the future. Their first impulse might be go into the metaverse
Test
and
it
reach
out
all
first.
the people. What's that?
Test it out in a way.
Yeah, reach the people there in the metaverse, disciple them, but then deploy the Timothys back into their local sphere. So the native person that actually is from that area. I think it's going to change and shift. And but I think the missionary will still be engaged. She'll still go over to those local spaces because she's developed those relationships. But I think, really the modern missions right now is probably that anyway, where they're trying to plant a church and then they move out, let the people, the indigenous people, lead the church. So I think it's going to be the same thing. It just the starting point won't be you going over. It'll be you going into the metaverse, deploying them into their local sphere. Then you might go visit Ephesus and visit Philippi and check out and see how all the Timothys are doing. But I think it's all going to be initially metaversial. Is that a word? Missions, especially the 1040 window. Yeah, I just coined metaverse. 1040 window. That's huge. Like we've reached people who would not. They can't even maybe go to a church. And there are people that have come on and have told us that they really are. Even one guy, he's from China. I'm not sure where. He's really reticent to even say much. He comes and listens because he's just concerned that in some way maybe information might get out. And you know more about that than I do. You're over in obviously that whole region of the world. But I just think being able to reach some of those folks that have been really hard to reach on the ground, the IRL, is really going to be possible in the metaverse. So
I love how you're thinking about this.
Yeah.
No, you can verbally process this kind of things. Once it hits the internet, it's going to be here forever. So your words are carved in stone. Whatever
forever.
you just.
All the entire missions, all the organizations. My sister's a missionary, for crying out loud. So I just my sister.
Sorry, sister. But I'll tell you, I like how you're thinking of this in the hybrid sense of the term, because life on life transformation, Jesus rubbed shoulders with the outcast, the marginalized of society, and moved into their world. But you can't discount the fact that the world now includes the metaverse. It is a subset of the world. It's real people in an alternate space. And so, especially like when you mentioned the 1040 window, these are places that people can't go, many Americans anyway. Now, you want to change it up and say, well, Filipinos can get in there and the global South missionary. And that's true. But this, what I'm hearing from your whole reply is a glass half full kind of take.
Yeah.
We can enter into spaces incarnationally, set off, ignite little movements. And then if there's a way to connect them into a local body in that particular region, in the IRL, in the real world, then that would be awesome. I mean,
or maybe they start one. Maybe they start where there wasn't a church. Yeah. They're the ones that plant.
And this, I don't know if you know the stats and data about how many people are in the metaverse right now. We're talking about Gen Z. I mean, they grew up with the internet.
Oh, yeah.
I certainly did not. You didn't.
Yeah.
But what is the majority of people are going to be in this space from Gen Z within, I don't know, 5-10 years. What is this going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know what I've looked at in past, writing articles and stuff, and there's numbers all over the place. You kind of wonder, who's right? I mean, we know it's big because it just it's everyone. I mean, it's just big, and it depends on which platform you go in. Like some platforms, a little more the crickets in the background. It's like, is anybody here? But then you go into others, and it's like, wow, like I cannot believe the volume of people in all these worlds, because you can see when you go onto these platforms, you can see where people are at, and then amount of people that are in these, and you're like, wow, I can't believe all these people are just hanging out, like
so. So what are you talking, like dozens, hundreds, thousands?
Oh, thousands, hundreds of thousands, and just like say I pop on VR chat, for example. If I pop on to one of the more popular ones, I mean, definitely in the hundreds of thousands that I'm aware of, and there might even be more, because there's just so many worlds. So I can't even see them all, but you can just get a sense of this is a hopping place. And then, and there's so many platforms. But again, I don't know, we're definitely in the millions across the globe for sure. And Asia is huge for this. The people in Asia are really big. Not only are they already big in technology, the metaverse is big. In the gaming world, I mean, it's just, that's the big one right there. The gaming world, when you combine that into the metaverse number, I mean, it's off the charts. There's nothing bigger under the sun in terms of people getting involved in some kind of form of entertainment, if you will, than gaming in the metaverse. Yeah, bigger than professional sports now, bigger than Hollywood. It's crazy. So yeah, I think you're right. The Zers and the alphas and everyone, that's going to be their world, is online.
And again, though, what I see when I describe Thailand, like I just did a moment ago, when we talk about 0.77, that's less than 1% Christian, okay, in a country of 70 million people, 65 million people, never even heard of Pra Yesu, Jesus Christ. Who is that? What is that thing? They have no idea. And so I see this little tip, like an iceberg poking out of the surface. Underneath, what I see is pure opportunity. And so I'm very interested to see how this, transforms into the missions world. And I don't know. And plus you have different tech and platforms that are going to come up from China that 1 billion plus people have access to. That it's not natural for us to navigate there onto that platform. Perhaps it's in Mandarin or whatever the deal is. And there's different little pockets. But what I see is an opportunity to reach people for Christ. What kind of interactions have you had with people that has led to some sort of, if not in real life, I keep saying IRL, but I should preface it.
I've changed to local. I've changed to local and global, because IRL implies, I used to call it IRL too. It implies that the virtual reality is not real, which it is real, just in a different way, right? So I call it local and global at this point.
Okay. Yeah. Well, then it creates a problem for guys like me who are calling in from Thailand. In the metaverse and outside the metaverse in real life.
You'll have to call something else, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But where was I getting at with that?
Oh, sorry. I missed you.
I was going to say, tell me about an interaction that happened in the metaverse, but if then that had some sort of connection in actual life there in California, or at least some sort of transformative aspect even in the metaverse. Tell me about some sort of testimony you've seen or undergone.
Man. So many cool things. I mean, one, just in terms of connecting in the physical realm, So we do every year a thing called our VR family reunion. Now we just started it last year, but we're doing it again here in October. And I think about 10 people came just in the States right now. We got a bunch of people over in Europe and UK, but that was just too much of an ask for them. And of course, it was just after the pandemic. But anyway, about 10 people last year. I think we may have 15 or 20 this year. Come to Yuba City and spend the weekend with us, worship with us. They stay in the homes of families here in the church.
They come actually physically, huh?
Yeah, physically. So that's one way.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
it's pretty awesome. And it's one way just to kind of, because a lot of these people, let me give you a story of Stuart. So Stuart was a guy in North Carolina, wasn't walking with God. I mean, Bible Belt, so he had some exposure, but really hadn't been in church in a long, long time and really wasn't a Christian and was struggling. And he was in VR chat, hanging out for hours and hours a day. And that's, he's in his early 20s, and that's just what people do. That's what a lot of people do. They just go and hang out in the metaverse. And so he came to our church somehow. I don't know all the ways that he got there, and became a Christian. And I began to disciple him. He's now, after a couple of years now, he's now directing our VR chat campus. He built our campus and directs it. And he's led a bunch of people to the Lord, discipling some guys. And so he ended up coming to the VR family reunion. It was just so cool after all this time spent with him in formats like this, where we would do discipleship, but I'd never been able to hug him. That was so cool, right? And I think this whole process began to help him see how valuable the church was. And so we ended up helping him find a local church in North Carolina, a church that I knew. And now he goes there and he's involved there, but he's also still he's essentially a missionary. He's in a local church, and he's sort of a missionary going into the metaverse with Cornerstone to reach more people. So that was a pretty cool story. And Alice is another one. I tell hers a lot because it was so amazing. She is in the UK. She's also in her early 20s, and she was a Satanist, the sweetest Satanist I've ever met, because she is really sweet, but she called herself a Satanist. And I'm like, are you sure you're a Satanist? Maybe I'm misunderstanding. But her parents, and I think even her grandparents, had no connection or history to the church. Even in the UK, the UK. I mean, it's the numbers have declined so extensively in the church world over there. Yeah. And so she had no connection to church other than just knowing she didn't have a good opinion of it. And well, she kept coming. She initially came to our church, and her avatar was the future queen of hell. And she came to troll. She told us later she was going to come and give us a hard time. Well, we just loved her, and we're so glad you're here. You're welcome here. We preach Jesus and how he changed our life, but man, you are absolutely welcome to hang out with us. And so she did for like a year and a half. She kept coming faithfully. Wow. It was really crazy, and we just kept praying for her. And sure enough, it might be 6 months, maybe more now, she became a Christian. Prayed one of the most beautiful prayers I'd ever heard a new convert pray, because I think she really, really processed for a year and a half. Does she want to make this change? Because it meant it really is like probably some work that people do in the 1040 window where families sort of disown you and friends. And she really, her family was like, you're crazy. You joined a cult or something, because she became a Christian. But her life has changed so dramatically. So that's a pretty cool story. And we're actually going to we're hoping that me and my Metaverse pastor, maybe some others, we're going to fly over to the UK and have a weekend retreat. And we probably have about 10 people in the UK that come faithfully to Cornerstone VR, and we're going to have them all come and meet at this retreat place. And so I'll get to meet Alice there. And that's just because I have not met her in person yet.
Yeah,
so,
I see.
You know what I mean? But we're super close, but I have never actually, given her a hug. And so that's going to be pretty cool. So
these are the divine. Sure, I'm sure there's way more stories, but these are the divine intersections that I think the metaverse opens up even broader. God is a master of creating these divine intersections in life, and you don't know exactly why people come into your life, a reason, a purpose, or what it's for, but somehow it inevitably leads to some sort of greater impact. And now you've never even met her, but you connect with her regularly. This is the new unique thing. And when you mentioned a second ago talking about talking about Europe and post-Christian. In Meet Generation Z, James Emery White describes Gen Z as the first truly post-Christian generation. And there's tons of stats that go alongside this, but 1 out of every 4 Americans, let's move back to the North America, who abandoned the traditional Judeo-Christian framework consider themselves religiously unaffiliated, otherwise known as the nones, N-O-N-E-S, people who self-identify as either atheist, agnostic, or nothing in particular. And Gen Z comprises a sizable portion of this demographic. I'm reading this from my recent book, Gospel Privilege, who I quote lots of different other sources. But these are the people that I wouldn't consider, only because I'm a stickler with words, unreached, right? They are within the vicinity of churches that can tangibly reach out to them. But there's a dynamic of the post-Christian aspect that how do you get into people's lives? And you are finding that the metaverse kind of opens up opportunities like you alluded to before. People's guards are let down in some particular way.
Yeah, I mean, they can jump in, just the nature of the way the metaverse works. Just imagine, I kind of look at it this way, and from the missions context, thinks it might be a helpful analogy, but it's like a whole nother world. And in this world, there are all these continents, and inside of these continents are all these people groups, these tribes. And so the platforms are all these continents. I mean, Meta has their Horizons, VR Chat, Microsoft has Altspace. There's just all these. There's a bunch of them, and people tend to kind of go to their platform. They just start to like it, and they pretty much stick with that for the most part. You can hop around really easily, but they just don't. But they get in that continent, and then they begin to tribalize. They have some connections, maybe some shared interests. I mean, it's just like in the IRL or local experience. And before you know it, you've got all these unique tribes of all these people. And there is some diversity. I mean, there's definitely people from all over the globe. But really the diversity is also in just interests. And there's
still homogenous in a diversified way somehow.
Yeah, it's really kind of strange, but it's all but you can't, like, when you walk in, like, I can't just there's like groups, for example, people that really love Star Wars. There's these clans that they have a whole enterprise of like systems. Like, they have their leaders, and they have all these, and sometimes they have wars. It's the whole thing's beyond. Again, you and I are Xers, so I'm just trying to put my mind around this. But it's really serious to all these people. And so if I walk into one tribe, and I say I walk into a platform, a continent, and I see some people over here, and I go start talking to them, and it's, even though we're speaking English, I might be completely not connecting with them in any way. I have to learn their distinctive, unique brand of what they're about. And so anyway, it's just, but the cool thing is about the church is you can build a church, and it'll show up as one of the worlds or show up as an event. And people there, they can pop in and out really easily. So the guard is down, where it's a little intimidating for someone who's a nun, who's in that category or has a bad memeified view of the church. All they've heard is some bad stories in the news, and they're not going to go to that scary looking building on a Sunday morning. And because they don't know what they're going to find out. They don't know if you're going to be like sacrificing chickens on the altar. They don't know what they're going to get, and they may not be able to get out quick. Well, in the metaverse, they can just instantly pop in, look around, see if it's weird, and if they feel it's too weird, they can head out quick, and no harm, no foul. And
so depending on your avatar that day, they might just pop out.
They might pop out if I'm looking like a chicken that's being sacrificed. Yeah, of course. But if they hear the gospel, and that's the thing, it's just the beauty, the power of the word. It's amazing how hungry these people are who have never heard the word. And I'm not some gifted preacher. I'm just going through the Bible, just trying to bring God's word. And I'm always like, are these people who are into gaming and distracted? That Gen Z kind of distraction. And are they gonna, and millennials, are they gonna really pay attention? And it's amazing. They'll pop in and they'll just sit there. And they'll listen to what is a lecture, probably too long of a lecture on my part. And it's like they've never heard it before. And that's why, people are getting saved. They're blown away by the power of the gospel and the word of God. And they never would have gone to a church to hear it. They never would have turned on a radio station to hear some famous preacher. But they're in a game. They're in a chat platform. they've come to talk and hang out and learn about things and interact, and they see a church and they're like, well, that's weird. I'll check it out. Who cares? They pop in, and then they're like captivated by the power of the word that doesn't return void. So it's like so ripe. That's what I keep people that are maybe concerned about, nervous about it. I'm like, you don't have to call it a church if you don't want to, if you feel uncomfortable. If you just want to see it as an evangelistic, missional kind of enterprise, why not? Like, yes, be careful. I've got people that go in with me. And fortunately, in the church world, you can contain and control your environment. So we don't have crazy town, but you still want to go with, 2x2 kind of thing. But man, I'm just like, anyone that has a desire to reach the lost, I just can't stress to them enough how important it is to get into the metaverse. It's so inexpensive, right? To get the headset. It doesn't take a lot of learning. It really is not a huge learning curve. Again, I couldn't even spell VR, before but I mean, it really is not that complicated.
Sound it out.
Yeah. Once you get in there, you start talking to people, and I promise you, you're going to have more opportunities to share your faith and more opportunities than maybe you've ever had in your life. That sounds crazy, but it is hard to break the shell of so many people in our day. They're just the post-Christian world. It's just hard to even find that connecting point. They're not interested or they're afraid, but the metaverse, it's just right there. It's like they're there to talk. It's Mars Hill. They just want to spend time listening to others and talking about all the, you know what I mean? That's what the philosophers and the people were doing. They just want to hear each other talk about random things. And so you're like, I've got something to share. It's about this guy that rose from the dead. And many of them will say, you're crazy, okay. And then some will say, tell me more, And so it's just the best thing ever in terms of evangelistic opportunities that I've seen. And I've been around for a few decades now. So.
I'm looking at that little lower third under your name there. It says Pastor, Cornerstone Church. You talk like a missionary, man. I mean, you're talking about going into spaces 2x2, evangelistic outreach, apostolically reaching out to people, speaking in lives. I love that. And as you share that, I'm a kind of a big proponent I've share a lot how access changes everything. And the greatest injustice known to humankind is a lack of gospel access. And I say that, of course, in my context where I live in the 1040 window in the most unreached country in Southeast Asia. But it does not stop there. I think there are these opportunities. Whoops. I lost you there. There's all these other opportunities for sharing. And do you think that sharing in the metaverse, sharing your faith, helps you be able to articulate faith sharing in I don't want to say IRL, in real life? I mean, is there ways that you've seen benefits of your church members going into the metaverse, sharing their faith, and now kind of when they're out and about shopping and doing their regular life, they're actually like more inclined to share the gospel than before?
Yeah. And I did, I had a bunch of folks that I was training, and I would bring them. So we do some training here, and then I would bring them into the metaverse, and we would do, give them opportunities to maybe teach in the church, Bible studies or small groups, but also go out and just talk to people. And so that was pretty cool to see them do that. And I think what it translated for them into IRL or the local environment, physical environment, was maybe just it lessened their nerves. Maybe it made them feel a little more confident. It's still, you still get, how it is. I mean, I'm sure, even though being a missionary, you probably still get the butterflies in your stomach every time you go to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
Right. We still get it, but
I've never experienced that, bro. I've never experienced fear in sharing my faith at all.
So, you get that natural, like, oh man. And even though you've done it a bunch of times, but you just get more and more used to that feeling. So that the butterflies,
practice
as they say,
makes perfect.
They fly in formation. It's okay if they're there as long as they fly in formation. And so I think a lot of people just get those butterflies become so more overwhelming that they're just like, I can't do this. And so going to the metaverse, it's a little bit easier, although you still get the butterflies because it feels real because you're really talking to real people in a space that everyone's sharing. And so you still feel nervous, but again, the avatar and all that, it reduces it a little bit. So I think that maybe makes them or made them more confident to maybe share in the physical realm. But there's still more I'd like to explore with that, because I probably haven't given as much time as I would like to see more tactical training of taking people in there. That's just on me in terms of time management. But I think when I've done that, it's been very helpful for them, and for me too. Like, you feel more ready to engage in conversations, and apologetically too. Real quick, the people that are in the metaverse, they're usually very intelligent, and I think at this stage in the game, people that are, probably that demographic that's playing games that are in the techie world. On the whole, I'm sure the averages tend to be maybe more educated, more intelligent, perhaps, because they definitely are able to many can articulate their viewpoints on Islam or on atheism or on whatever their worldview is. And so you don't see that as intensely in the local environment. You probably meet more people that aren't thinking about it a whole lot. They just aren't interested in God. But that makes you stronger. You're actually, you're flexing your apologetic muscle a little bit. And sometimes you can't answer the question. You're like, now you're ready to study it up. But it really does shape you. So I think that's one benefit too, is that it reduces some of the nerves, but it still puts you in a crucible of sorts where you got to give a reason for the hope that's within you. And so I think it can really train up Christians physically in the physical realm by going in. And I mean, tons of businesses are using the VR to like train their people. I mean, surgeons are learning how to do surgery from VR applications. So I think Christians, we can learn how to do apologetics and evangelism through VR for sure. Yeah.
Amen. And I like how this conversation is going, because oftentimes the church seems like it's behind the curve a little bit when it comes to tech or other things. Real quick, a couple quick questions, and then we'll kind of close it down here. But I was going to say, how many other churches are doing this? How many other churches are in the metaverse right now that you know of?
I mean, there have to be scores now. I mean, it might be approaching. I'm just going to take a wild guess. I mean, it's got to be over 50, maybe.
Okay. Yeah.
And I don't know all the details behind all those churches. I just know that when I first got in 2.5 years ago, we talked about DJ's church, and then there was me, our church, and I think there were a couple evangelists out there that they're good friends of mine, but now they weren't really like doing church per se. And so there might have been just 2 or 3 churches. I'm trying to think if there's a third one, but yeah. And now it's in 2.5 years, it's probably got to be 50. If not more.
So what's your encouragement to pastor of a local church? Depending on their demographic, they may or may not be able to get into this as easily as another. But what's your encouragement to them? Do they need to just buy a headset and get in the metaverse, or what's your encouragement for that person who wants to reach out to people in and around their zip codes and way beyond? What should they do?
I would just buy the headset. I mean, it's fun too. You're buying, you can play games on it. So have a good time with it. So you're not, even if you try it out and you're like, oh, I don't know if this is for me, you still got a fun piece of tech, and a little bit more about the coming environment that the world is good. It's good to be aware of that as a pastor. So I would recommend just getting it. In fact, I think I understand there's churches that maybe don't have the budget. We're a small church. I mean, we're under 300. So it's not like you have to be a mega church. But I mean, your budget probably might be available to you to even your missions committee might even say, "Hey, we'll give you $300 or $400. I think it's like $400 now to get the Oculus, the Meta's headset." And I bet you they buy it for you just so you can kind of have opportunities to share your faith, check out the culture as it is now. You're becoming a cultural apologist and researcher. So I would get the headset, start looking at pop into my church. I'd love to talk to you. You can see what we do. Pop into some other churches. Just explore, experiment. There's almost in every church you're going to have someone who is a little bit tech savvy, because you're probably going to have some teenagers, some Zers, some millennials that if you were to say, and maybe there's somebody you would like to see grow in their faith, and be a Timothy, maybe you could say, hey, would you be interested in this? And maybe you go in with them, but they're really the, how Paul and was it Barnabas and they called Barnabas Hermes or Zeus because Paul was talking so much. So maybe it's you and Timothy, but Timothy really is the guy who knows what in the world's going on, and you're just there to kind of like talk and be the pastor, but you're kind of helping Timothy develop. But I mean, that's great. Another way to disciple. So I think you're going to find young people. I bet you every single congregation, no matter how small, probably has a teenager that would be like thrilled to be involved with this.
Oh yeah.
And activate their faith in ways they maybe never thought they could activate it because they didn't know how to in the physical church. Sometimes, let's be honest, we reduce opportunities to a bare minimum. Like, can you sing? Do you like to work in the nursery with kids? Can you preach in front of a bunch of people? And most people are like, no, right? And so they're sitting there going, what am I supposed to do?
Exactly.
Well, here you go. And I bet you there's teenagers that would love it. So I just think every church should at least just become aware. And even if they don't start a church, that's fine. Not everyone's called to plant. Sure. But to be aware of it.
As you're sharing all those, I see direct correlations. If you want to expand that into missionary organizations or sending agencies, this is a very similar response could be given to those organizations and nonprofits as well. Lastly, I want to ask you have a bunch of Christians who are already in the metaverse. You just spoke to pastors, leaders, perhaps Timothy's, Barnabas's. Now, what would you say to those who are already in the metaverse? They kind of just there for fun, hanging out. How can they begin activate? What leads to some sort of faith sharing passion and zeal? Where is this going to come from? What's your encouragement to them?
Well, I mean, definitely. I mean, it comes from just simply reminding ourselves constantly, what are we here for? Like, why did Christ save us? Why am I still sucking wind right now? And why didn't he just whisk me off to heaven the moment I prayed to receive him? And we all know the reason why we're here is to follow in his footsteps, to seek and to save the lost, to become fishers of men and women, right? To go out and to make disciples of all nations, of all people groups, even the ones that are in the metaverse, and disciple them, teaching them everything that he taught us and baptizing them. So I think if we kind of just return back to those very foundational, simple to understand missional purposes, I think it just activates within us a desire not to waste our time just playing games, if that's what we're on there doing. There's nothing wrong with playing games. But if that's all we're doing, and we're not seeing that everything can be used to the glory of God, whether we eat, drink, or play a game in the metaverse, it can all be used to the glory of God. And so I think if we just have that mentality, we're like, well, maybe I can try to, when I'm playing a game, and not everyone is an evangelist. Not everyone has the call to share their faith. Some people are just more gifted at evangelism. You know how it is. So we're not saying like everyone out there has to like form a evangelistic ministry or plant a church, but surely
Alpha course.
I think their Alpha course video. No,
start now.
But surely they can like say, hey, I'm playing this game, and maybe I can invite a friend that either in the metaverse or somebody even in the physical realm who has, maybe they can connect them somehow into the game, and through that game, maybe I could just, figure out a question that might open the door to conversation. Yeah. Maybe if I'm in the metaverse, something easy is just like we do in the physical realm, invite them to church. Say, hey, there's a church I know of, Cornerstone, or whatever church you want to put out there that's a Bible-based church. Say, hey, why don't you come and visit this church with me? And the conversations might even open up from there, whether they come or not. You've opened the door to things about God. And I guarantee in the metaverse, most people will take that bait. They will, because they're there to talk to people. They're there to make friends. They're there to go deeper and to learn about others. They're not just busy with their lives. They're in the metaverse right now. They're wasting time with other people. They're not trying to get to the grocery store. They're not trying to get to the soccer game. They're not trying to get out of the church house to get to the Sizzler or whatever restaurant you go to. They're actually there to connect. And if you say, hey, you ever gone to church before? I guarantee you're going to have a robust conversation like you've never had before, often in the IRL. So that's why just open. It's so easy to do, and you never know what fruit's going to come from that. So that's my encouragement to anybody that's out there already in the metaverse.
Love
Don't
it.
wait.
And
Don't waste that time.
yeah, and I hear your passion coming forth, and I love how you're bringing it back to the centrality of Christ and who He is in our lives, and even the tagline of this podcast. Know God's heart, join His mission. If you've experienced Jesus, if He has transformed and touched your life in any way, if His life has been felt in you and you've experienced His presence, my goodness, it's only inevitable that you open your mouth, you join Him on mission wherever that may be. Not everybody's going to travel or across the world to the ends of the earth and, sell all their stuff, pack their bags in a coffin and take the slow boat to China. But we all have a part to play. Every citizen in God's kingdom is significant. And I don't know why it keeps going back over there, man. That was a great little point I was making, and that screen came up. But every citizen in God's kingdom is significant, and the excitement of sharing your faith, you get you begin to experience Jesus in a more intimate way when you talk about Him. I've experienced that. I'm sure you would agree, Jason. Would you pray for those who are watching and maybe listening to this conversation right now, and then we'll say goodbye and reconnect at a later time. But I'd love for you to just pray for those who are watching and listening right now.
Yeah, let me pray. And I real quick too, I know you've mentioned missions organizations and even schools that are training up missionaries and seminaries. That's a good point. I just want, if anybody's watching this, because I bet you there probably are, because you're connected to all them. Like this is something that every missions agency should probably at least experiment with. And maybe this is a whole new way in which they train missionaries and deploy missionaries. So anyway, just thought that was a great point you made. I never thought about that context. That's one thing. I've done a bunch of podcasts with people, and no one's ever brought up the missions angle and how these organizations really should be the first. Almost the missions agencies should almost be the first ones into this. Like, you know what I mean? Cutting edge.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
We already struggle with geographic problems already, right? You got this person here and there, and how do we gather all together at the same time? Hello, the metaverse, man. It seems so natural in my mind. Although I admit I've never been there. So, but I'll see you there soon.
Coming. Christmas, get a headset.
I'll send my letter to you. Forget Santa.
Oh man. All right. Well, it was good talking, David. Let me pray.
Yeah, you too.
Well, Lord Jesus, we just come before you and we just thank you that we could even be talking about these things. It's wild that we are even here, that we exist, that we live and move and have our being. It's because of you creating us. And not only did you create us, you saved us, you redeemed us through your precious blood spilled on that cross. We thank you for that. And then the resurrection, proving that all of this is true and that we have a great inheritance in you. We just give you glory. You are worthy. And we thank you then that not only did you save us, but you've given us a great mandate that just excites us. And like David said, when we speak of you to those that don't know you, there's just no greater joy. And then to see them come to faith, I mean, it just exponentially increases that joy, and that joy becomes our strength. And so we just want to thank you that you've arranged things in such a way and created us in this way and redeemed us in this way and commissioned us in this way that we get to experience that kind of robust joy. And we just pray for everyone that's listening who maybe there's people that are really kind of their heads are spinning and maybe even skeptical. I pray, Lord, you just you do what you do by just helping them process through that and to pray with you and to you about learning more about this and maybe even just checking it out just to see, is this really where you're moving? Because we want to be where you are. We don't want to just do things for innovation's sake. We want to actually, be where you're at and where your Spirit's working. And so pray that you just help them to just experiment. And those that are ready to go, Lord, I pray that you would just, they're saying, here I am, send me. So I pray that you would just raise up an army of missionaries that are doing missions in a whole new way, but really an old way. They're just getting into cultures and speaking to people who are far from God. So just deploy them, and we just pray much fruit will come from that. And in David's ministry, would you continue to increase that and bless and prosper that so that more and more people can come to know Christ and be discipled and deployed into your great work. So again, thanks for this time. And we just pray that you would get all the glory through us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, my friend.
Yeah.
Powerful conversation. I appreciate your
great
prayer. And definitely look forward to seeing you again. I'll have all your links and descriptions in the description here, or links and bios in the description. But yeah, blessings to you, Cornerstone Church, and all that you put your hand to, and to your family as well. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Hey, thanks, David, for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
Yeah.
Missions Pulse. Know God's heart, join his mission. This podcast is powered by Within Reach Global. Subscribe, watch, and listen on YouTube today. Visit missionspulse.com.